The Wilds Files is an immigration law podcast. The content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organization or law firm. Listeners should seek the counsel of a qualified attorney to address specific legal concerns. By listening, you acknowledge that the host and guests are not providing professional or personalized legal advice. Welcome to the Wilds Files. The files are open.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Wilds Files, your go-to podcast for everything U.S. immigration law. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Wilds, and we're very lucky to have another attorney with us today, Caroline, who's the chair of our talent visa team. Caroline, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing well. Talent visa team is what we call it, but we used to call it the O1 team. What is talent visas? Why don't we just start with that from the beginning?
Talent visas are, on the non-immigrant side, O1s, P1As, P2s, P3s, and all of their essential support staff. O2s, P1Ss, all of those that run the gamut. On the green card side, we have EB1s, EB1A, EB1B, EB1C, and EB2 NIWs.
It sounds like you're like my son saying the alphabet. Imagine I have no idea what any of these letters mean. What the heck is an O1? What the heck is a P1? What are you even talking about?
An O1 is for people, individuals of extraordinary ability, people who are operating at the top of their field. And I'm not just saying actors, musicians, anybody, stunt doubles, tattoo artists, anybody who's at the top. The Ps are a little bit more distinct in that they are usually reserved for specific activities. So you have, you have your P3s for individuals who are performing in culturally unique art forms, tango, flamenco. You have your P1As, a lot of esports, a lot of other type of sports players. So you have anybody who is doing something that usually does not require a degree and is really good at whatever they're doing for a living.
So something that involves talent in some capacity. So the talent visa team that you chair, that you're the leader of, an amazing leader, by the way. I look up to you for everything, as you know. It's for people who have talent in some capacity, whether it's talent in the athletics, talents on the stage, talents in the business field, just talents in some capacity that puts you perhaps above the rest of the people in your field.
Okay, yeah, cool. You are someone who is written about in the press. People have issued awards to you. They like to pay you a lot of money. Yeah, all of those different factors.
Awesome. And I want to jump into some of those and hear a little bit about some of the cases that you've worked on. I think our viewers and our listeners will be really interested in hearing about some of them. Naturally, when you're dealing with talented individuals, you're dealing a lot with the celebrities that we work with. But before we even get there, and I know I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but why don't you pull it back a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Caroline, as you said. I am Cuban American, born and raised in Miami, Florida. I am extremely empathetic to immigrant communities, all kinds of immigrant communities. And I've been here. This is going to be my 10th year at Wilds and Weinberg, working in the talent space. And this is just something I'm very passionate about.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So jumping right into it then, you've explained already a little bit about the O's and the P's, and I think we'll do an episode on each visa in its own right, and we'll talk about the nitty-gritty and the actual requirements, and we'll talk about it a little bit tangentially today. But first, because this is an introduction to you, what better way to start it than talking about some of these cool, fun celebrity clients you deal with? So the first question I have for you, and I'm genuinely just curious about this because I know sometimes when I'm meeting clients, a lot of the times I, kind of stargaze a little bit. I know who they are, but there's times where I have absolutely no idea who they are either, even if they're the biggest in their field. So do you know all of these celebrity clients that you work with? Are there any clients that perhaps most people in the world know that you've never even heard of until you started working on their case?
Yes. And I cannot believe I have to confess this, but when I started working on Millie Bobby Brown's visas, I had no idea what Stranger Things was.
You never saw it, really? Wow.
No
I'm
idea.
shocked. I am absolutely shocked. I love Stranger Things. So as a huge fan, obviously I knew who Millie Bobby Brown was. I remember watching even Enola Holmes back in the day and all some of these other stuff. But Stranger Things that's an iconic show. You never saw it before? Have you
I
seen it
had
now
seen her.
since
I had
working with
seen
her?
her in Godzilla. I had seen her in
Okay.
Godzilla, and that
Right.
she was known to me from there. But the Stranger Things cult, I had zero idea, and I remembered in that moment, like when you criticize or like you like think like how could someone do that?
Yeah.
Leon Wiles did not know who John Lennon was when he met him. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm having this Leon Wiles moment. I don't know who this is. I don't
Yeah.
realize that she is as huge and as famous as she is.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that it's so funny that you bring that up. My grandfather, when he first met John and Yoko, he had absolutely no idea where they was. He went back to my grandmother, and he said, I don't know, I don't remember the exact quote, but my grandmother said something like, "Who are those heavy hitters you met with?" And my grandfather said, "Oh, I think it was Jack Lemmon and Yoko Moto," not knowing any idea who they were whatsoever. And
oh my God.
I could never fathom how you could not know John Lennon of the Beatles. Obviously, there was no internet back then, no social media, so it was a
Mhm.
completely different world. So I always gave him credit for that, but not knowing Millie
Yeah.
Bobby Brown, wow. What,
But
anybody
yeah, I
else?
don't
Yeah.
get credit because because
Right. Well,
I'm
because
dealing with
Stranger
Instagram.
Things was
Yeah.
huge.
No,
It was
I
like
don't
a
get
cult,
credit. I
like you
get
said.
it.
Yeah.
No,
Uh,
I mean, the other one too is like it's one thing like Millie Bobby Brown and like actors, musicians who are like global fame, but then there's a lot of niche areas like when I met the concept of diamond platinums, the
yeah.
Tanzanian enormous singer. He's huge. He's
Yeah.
huge. And I came across I started working on his materials during the pandemic, and he came out with a really amazing pandemic song that I don't know half of what it says other than pandemic all the way through. And we were just playing it in my house left and right, and nobody knew where it came from. And I'm a huge fan of diamond platinums, and I've discovered that he's royalty in
Yeah.
many places in the world, and I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That
those
one
are
will
two
let slide
examples.
because I imagine most of our viewers and listeners might some of them probably have heard of Diamond Platinums, others maybe not. But Millie Bobby Brown, wow, I still can't get over that. So sometimes you know the celebrities, sometimes you don't. Obviously, are there any
Mhm.
major celebrities that pretty much everybody around the world knows that you've worked on? Any cases that? And by the way, just for everybody out there, we're only sharing information on individuals that have given us permission to say that we represent them. We're very cautious about our confidentiality. I think it's just worth mentioning. All of these people, we're not going to talk about the specifics of their cases, but we're just mentioning the ones that have given us permission to even mention them in general. So, any major celebrities that everybody knows?
Yes, and I knew this one. I knew this one when I saw her name, Sinead O'Connor,
Right.
was I mean, I was floored and I could not believe, that we were lucky enough to represent her.
Yeah.
And she was in a different place in her life and getting into some like book deals and stuff like that. And um it was a really nice experience to work with her because she was very, very real. Like she was
Yeah.
a very real person. And you don't get this like facade. You didn't get like someone everybody thought she should be. You just got her. And that was a really nice experience
Yeah.
to work
And
with.
Sinead really was a massive celebrity. I mean, that her song "Nothing Compares to You." I mean, it's one of the greatest songs of all time. But it's funny that, and it's
You don't
amazing
want to
that you
sing it?
say, well,
You don't want to sing it for us?
no, maybe I'll have one of our, maybe next time. I don't know. I don't want to break everybody's ears, but Sinead, that you mentioned how real she was. Sometimes we deal with celebrities, and sometimes they have egos, sometimes they don't. But Sinead was a very genuine person. I remember her coming to our house, actually, later in her life, for our Shabbat, for our Sabbath dinners, just to spend time with our family. I think she enjoyed the fact that none of us, we were very young, really knew who she was or how big she was. So we never bothered her about it. And she was always, I think, looking for that kind of family experience because, she had her own issues and her own family issues. Let's just leave it at that. But just having her there and talking to her sitting at dinner with us. I remember a specific image of walking in and she's sitting at the island talking to my mom just about like the weather. And I was just like, celebrities are just like us.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I think one thing that's very special about our firm is the amount of celebrities we deal with. So we're not stargazing. We treat them like normal human beings because they are normal human beings. And
Yeah.
there's no reason to treat them otherwise. There are some firms who they'll see a celebrity out there, they'll get nervous, they'll get too excited. Um, who knows? But we treat them like normal human beings, and I think Sinead's a really good example because she's an absolute icon. But she was
Hmm.
so normal and so down to earth, and just a pleasure to talk to. And
And I
you know,
mean, she had the same concerns we all have. I mean, same, worries, fears, dreams. She had a lot of the things that affect us all, I think to many celebrities' detriment, the only thing that's really different between them and us is that their problems are usually kind of thrown out into the limelight, when ours,
Right.
we can keep them a little more private. So I think helping them navigate that too is also a really important part of our representation, because we're dealing with a lot of sensitive information and just in general biographic information on them, and she was someone who really appreciated that, and I think that was important.
Yeah, yeah. When we're working with our clients, especially in the talent team, you really have to get to know the insides and outsides of somebody. You need to know pretty much when their career started, when their career,
Yep.
where they are in their career, and not just knowing about their career, but knowing about their personal life, how they got there, and their entire journey. So that is, But Sinead, she had her own issues and was dealing with a lot of trauma. So I guess a follow-up question, and this might be a little bit of a difficult topic to talk about, but I'm curious just how you personally deal with clients or people who have gone through trauma. Obviously, some celebrities have gone through issues in the past. Maybe there's an example you want to bring up and just how you kind of deal with that, speaking to them on that, human level.
Well, I mean, we have dealt with a lot of clients that have traumatic issues and are coincidentally celebrities, but the most recent one that was a first for a lot of us was Ellie Sharabi and Andrei Kozlov, the is better known as the Israeli hostages that survived and went on to have very important careers as spokespersons for the whole movement. I think going into it with support from a lot of my Jewish colleagues really set the tone. Not that I am not an honorary Jew, but understanding it from your perspective, understanding it from your dad's perspective, from Amy Einstein's perspective, just getting like a full view of it, and
Yeah,
then speaking to them from that perspective or from that level of respect, I think was something I did that I haven't previously had to do. So I had to do a little bit
yeah,
of research or guidance from you and my Jewish colleagues in general to get a sense of what would be appropriate, what would be acceptable, and maybe more phone calls than usual so that things wouldn't get lost in email,
yeah,
because you don't want to come off harsh or transactional um, while you are still doing right by them and doing the things that they need to do. So, if a requirement was at issue or they didn't understand why it was necessary, in most cases, I might email about it to explain and to put it in writing. Whereas here, because of the emotional charges here, who knows how my emails would come off. So
right.
I think we made more of an effort to have that human
Yeah,
connection, and
yeah,
that was
and
a different experience.
yeah, that was a difficult cases to work on just because of the experiences that they went through, coming out of being a hostage in Hamas captivity to wanting to share their stories in the United States, and doing it the right way through the right visa and stuff like that. But when we're speaking to them and just hearing what they went through, it's very difficult to absorb that sometimes. See, looking at them in the face. I remember sitting with Andrei and him sharing his story like this to me for over an hour. I was in awe and I didn't know what to say. And but sometimes they just want to be heard, and sometimes they just they need someone to just listen. And without getting into the politics of the issue, of course, they went through something extremely traumatic. And I think that you having that experience with Sinead and other individuals who it's trauma. Trauma is trauma. It's different
Yeah,
levels of it, of course, but you're
yeah.
still dealing with sensitive issues sometimes. And being able to say the right things and ask the right things without trying to potentially trigger someone, but getting all the information we need, there's a real skill in that. And I admire you for that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And I've seen you do that with multiple clients. And it's like an art, trying to get all that
Well,
info.
it's funny because
Yeah,
with Andre, I don't think I realized like what he had been. I mean, I knew the proceed, the kind of the history, what happened to him, how long he was in captivity. But when I saw his art, I remember you sent me the art, and I was like, oh my God, oh
yeah,
my God, I get it now. Like,
yeah,
and I'm not even, I wouldn't call myself an art critic. I wouldn't call myself like an expert in art, but there was something so emotional, so moving about
yeah,
those images that I could almost cry right now talking about it.
yeah,
That was the moment that I don't know, I understood. Like I right away, I made that connection with him, and it wasn't even so I think part of it is being open to the experience, because you could go into the job closed off. You could decide, I'm not going to let anybody affect me. I'm not going to let anybody touch my emotions. But the truth is, you're a much better advocate when you have that direct emotional connection or relationship. Not everybody, doesn't work with everybody. Doesn't work with every celebrity or, big name. But I find that when we're able to achieve it, I mean, it does wonders for their everything.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I love about what we do is we get to learn about so many different types of people.
Mhm.
So all the way from, hostages and Hamas captivity to we have Palestinian clients as well, all over the world. I mean, we hear people's stories. Our clients are people, and they're all coming with a different story from a different place, from a different age, from a different gender, from a different experience, from a different education, whatever it may be. You think about all the people that we've mentioned so far in the podcast. Aside from them, we've talked about Sinead O'Connor, Millie Bobby Brown, Diamond Platinums. I mean, the variety is just absolutely insane. And we didn't even prepare this. This is just coming off the cuff. I mean, we're dealing with across the world and across every single industry. And we're very lucky for that. And I feel very lucky for that. Um, what other types of people have you dealt with? Just lighten the mood a little bit after a deep conversation like that. Is there a specific type of category of individuals you like to work with? Athletes or entertainers or something else more out of the blue, maybe?
I mean, I love working with entrepreneurs, because they can touch, like, in the simple terms, they might be a business person, an expert
Right.
in business, but you have people that they're in all sorts of industries. Some of them are doing, like, what did I find out the other day? Someone was working he was gonna be like, I don't know, an executive at a company that's working with, like, these customizable things for food trucks. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
I'm like, how does the company get into this? How does the company start doing this? Like, how do you do this at a grand scale? And then it's the flip side of it, which is influencers. We think about influencers as creatives, and we think about influencers as, having fun in front of the camera. Like, they're in their living room and they're just doing a video that's hilarious and haha. And that's how most of them might start. But then they become a true business. And a
Yeah.
lot of them are some of the shrewdest business people I've ever met. The way they're monetizing their channels, the way they're monetizing the different social media platforms, to me has been a revelation, because I mean, you and I met some people that specialize in ASMR, things that
Yeah.
I never even imagined. And there's an influencer for every industry. And honestly, I'm starting to realize that the most successful ones are the ones that are best at business. And that, to me, I never thought about that before. I had
Right.
never even
Well,
contemplated that.
they're turning their voice and their image and their personality into a brand, and that
Mhm.
brand is they're marketing themselves and they're collaborating with other brands and companies, and they're monetizing it like crazy. But yeah, in any given day, I mean, let's say you're working on 5 different cases, spending an hour on each, you'll be going through an influencer, an athlete, an entertainer, potentially a hostage,
A
this
tattoo artist.
a tattoo artist. Well, that's another very niche area
Yeah.
that you've kind of built out within our practice, and that we've gotten so good at, essentially
Mhm.
tattoo artists. Are tattoo artists artists? That's a question I get all the time.
Oh, that's a
Th-
good
That's a
one.
question I get all
Oh.
the time from people that aren't tattoo artists. People
Mhm.
ask me, well, why do you call them tattoo artists? Are they really artists? So in your opinion, and then maybe you can give us an example of someone that you're allowed to talk about or someone you feel close to that you've worked on. Tell us a little bit about tattoo artists. Are they artists? Well, how do you do their visa? How does it work? That kind of stuff.
Well, I'll put it like this. The ones that are worthy of an O1 are artists, truly. The ones that do freehand or apply tattoo in a certain way, or have, a style that immediately, as soon as people see it, they know who the artist is. Those are the real O1s. Could they be business? Yes, but honestly, the tattoo artists at the heart, they are artists. They are people that are a lot of them didn't even start as tattoo artists. Some of them have started as sculptors. They've started as painters, and in fact, a lot of them continue to do that well into their career. But they just find that the human canvas works for them and is
Right.
actually like a really nice art form. Yeah, because anyone could apply, a stencil on someone's arm with the right tools, and maybe that would be fine. But most of the ones that get O1s are actually people that are doing it freehand, that people pay them for the creation of the tattoo itself on paper. Like,
Right.
yeah, they're true artists.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The human body is their canvas essentially, and the tattoo, whatever brush is as being their paintbrush. And I agree, by the way. I think they are artists. I think some of the things that they create are just absolutely stellar and gorgeous. And when you're finding these applications, you're providing proof or pictures of their art essentially, right? Or of the tattoos that they've done.
Well, a lot of them, this thing about the canvas is, so a lot of our tattoo artists are starting to get invitations to exhibit a prosthetic arm in a museum. So the museum or whoever's running the exhibit will send them an invite and say, tattoo this arm, tattoo this prosthetic arm. They do it, they send it in, and it's on permanent exhibit for a while, for whatever season it's going for. And that could easily be a painting on a wall.
Right.
It
It's
could
an art
easily be,
piece.
so it's really transferable. And that's why we include this specific example of an exhibit of a prosthetic arm in a museum. I include that stuff because yes, it's maybe not a tattoo on a human, but the whole source of why that came about was because of his tattooing, and it actually went on permanent exhibit, which is crazy. But also, I mean, people are walking around with that person's art, exhibiting it on themselves, not able to get rid of it unless they do crazy laser. And I think, yeah, it's crazy what they do, but I think that we try to be as versatile so that our tattoo artists have the flexibility to do all kinds of art, because
Right.
I think it's all related to one another. So we include all of it.
Yeah,
as much
and
as we can.
that's one thing we'll talk about another time, is this versatility and the flexibility that the O1 visa specifically allows for, and
Yeah.
using the regulations and the statutes in a way that gives our clients the most flexible way to do what they want, especially like an influencer. Like, what does an influencer really do? Are they working for themselves when they're posting videos? Are they working for another brand if they're not actually collaborating at the same time? So giving them flexibility to do what they want, I think is super important. So just to wrap it up, just that one question maybe to leave it on, and then we'll do it. We'll have you back for another episode to talk about, maybe a specific case study or the actual visas themselves. But any advice that you have for individuals who believe that they have talent or who are extremely talented, who want to get that O visa and maybe just aren't there yet? What kind of advice do you have for those people?
The first thing, and I think many people skip over this because it's not on it's not online, or it's not super obvious when you Google it. Find the future work. Find a company, an individual who will sponsor you. Find the companies, the organizations that are willing to offer you work offers. Try to be as creative as you can. If they don't want to sponsor your visa, figure out if an agent is in order. The work is really important, because if there's no work, there's no work visa. So
Right.
that is my first recommendation to people, because I don't think it's the most obvious. And second, keep a portfolio of everything that you do. If you meet someone, you network with someone, and that person is offering you to do a letter for you, write down that person's name, keep an email in the record, have it in a little tab or something, individuals willing to write letters. I don't know, but keep a record of everything you've accomplished, every judging instance, every award, because you never know how it might not be a big deal to you. It might be something that you did run of the mill as part of your usual accomplishments, but for the O1, this is the type of stuff that we need. And I find that if 2-3 years pass, people forget about it, they don't have
Yeah.
evidence of it. And so that would be my 2 recommendations.
Yeah, and I think on the first one, it's really good advice, and it sounds so obvious and intuitive. But people often come to us and say, "Hey, I'm this type of person, and this is what I do." And then the first question we ask them is like, "Okay, so are you going to be doing this in the U.S.?" And it's like, "I want to, but I don't have anyone giving me a job." Like part of the O1 is actually having future work. You need something to do in the United States. You can't just show
Yeah.
up and knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm a talented individual and I'm here." So I
Yeah.
think that is really spot on advice, because although it sounds so obvious, we're constantly telling individuals that they need that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it would save a lot of people, you know, effort, time, money, spinning their wheels on the categories when you don't even have the work lined up, or you don't know what projects you're going to take on. That might be worth pursuing more than evidence of your accomplishment sometimes. It kind of depends, but yes, kind of obvious, but I think it's important to say it to people. So those are my takes.
Exactly. All right, Caroline, thank you so much.
Josh,
We
thank
really
you.
appreciate you having. We'll have you soon. The Wilds files are open, but this file is officially closed. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.